Today I wanted to talk about interesting facts and guesses about two varieties of mangoes. The Dwarf Hawaiian right here and the Tess Pollock that we'll look at in just a few minutes. Now, Dwarf Hawaiian is a variety that came to Florida through Hawaii. The tag was lost in transit or whatever, and Gary Zill was actually the person who was importing that, and he didn't know what to call it. It was a very compact tree, and he got it from Hawaii, so he called it Dwarf Hawaiian. The variety itself originated in Puerto Rico, and then it apparently went to Hawaii, and then we got it in Florida from Hawaii. But the trees are compact, they're beautiful. The fruit itself is like the first or second variety in the whole grove to be ready to pick. Of course, the fruit are delicious, and it's very productive. So just a lot of pluses for Dwarf Hawaiian. A lot of people agree that the Dwarf Hawaiian is a Julie seedling, and I can definitely taste Julie in the fruit, and I see a lot of similarities to Julie in the seed. So a lot of people just don't know what the pollinating parent was for the Dwarf Hawaiian. My guess is that it was turpentine, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The Dwarf Hawaiian tree is a lot more productive than Julie, and turpentine is a very productive variety. Another thing is the flavor of the fruit. The Dwarf Hawaiian fruit, you definitely taste Julie in it, but it has an extra little zing to it. And the turpentine fruit has that little zing to it also. Plus, I think that it is an influencer as far as the season of the fruit. The Dwarf Hawaiian fruits a little bit earlier than Julie. So that's my guess on the parentage. So this is one of our Tess Pollock trees. It is just dripping with fruit. Crazy amount of fruit all over the place. It's also one of our earlier varieties, and we've actually picked a lot of fruit from this tree already, and still it has, just a huge amount of fruit. So some of it is ready to pick now. Some of it was ready to pick last night. We check this tree twice a day, and there's always something ready to pick. So we have the drops and whatever. But Tess Pollock is an interesting variety. I actually have the oldest trees here because a friend of mine, well, the whole family were friends of mine, the Pollocks, which they lived about a mile away from us, and they were really into growing tropical fruit trees, especially the son, whose name is Jim. And so they had a lot of trees on their property, Valencia Pride and Carey, Springfells, Turpentine. There were some others too, I can't recall what they were, but they really liked their mangoes, and Jim was very interested in the different fruits, not only mangoes but all sorts of other fruit. And he came over one time and said, I have this really good mango, and I'd like you to propagate it because there's just one tree. There was a seedling that grew up in a small hedge, and he let it fruit, and he tasted the fruit and said, this is just really good. And of course, you don't want to have just one fruit of a unique variety. I mean, sorry, you don't want to have just one tree of a unique variety, because if something happens to that tree, then that whole variety is gone. So I got some graftwood from him and grafted it in a few places. Interesting side note is that after about 2 years, that original tree died. So, you know, yay for Jim to ensuring its survival. But yeah, it was just really impressed him, and has impressed many people over the years. The Tess Pollock, he named it after his mother, who went by the name Tess, and so that's how we got Tess Pollock mango. The interesting thing about Tess Pollock is that he had a limited number of mango varieties in his yard. It was quite a large yard, a couple lots of, you know, fruit trees. And he, from his experience with the fruit and his, you know, reasoning and such, he is pretty darn sure that Tess Pollock is a Kerry turpentine cross. So that's really interesting, because of course Kerry and Julie are related, Kerry being the granddaughter of Julie, and both of them having related varieties that have a lot of similarities. One of the similarities that Dwarf Hawaiian and Tess Pollock have is that the season is a little bit earlier than the seed parent. Like, I think that the seed parent for Dwarf Hawaiian was Julie, and the Dwarf Hawaiian variety fruits earlier than Julie. There is a little bit of overlap in their seasons, but it's definitely an earlier season than Julie. And in the case of Tess Pollock, we have not yet started picking the Kerry mangoes, but we have been picking Tess Pollock for a couple weeks at least. And you know, both of them are more productive than the seed parent. The Julie is a nice variety, but it makes, on a good year, a moderate amount of fruit. It is never a heavy producer. Dwarf Hawaiian, on the other hand, very heavy producer. Same for Kerry. We get good crops on Kerry, we get great crops on Tess Pollock. So that's sort of what really interests me about those two varieties, is that I think there is a lot of evidence that turpentine was the pollinating parent in both of those cases, and it has made really superior varieties, because the fruit is very tasty, you know, it does have a little bit of fiber, but not objectionable at all in either case. But it gets that special flavor from the turpentine tree. It gets a slightly earlier season from the turpentine influence, and the productivity is crazy good. And again, I attribute that to turpentine. So here are two more things that Dwarf Hawaiian and Tess Pollock have in common. One of those two things is that they both tend to get anthracnose, but it's usually just skin deep. You know, Tess Pollock, sometimes you get a beautiful gold-colored mango, and then there'll be one black spot on it. But when you go to peel the fruit, you'll notice it doesn't go into the fruit at all. And then the other thing that they have in common, which is, you know, not really something to brag about, is that they win the popularity contest with the squirrels. A lot of early season Tess Pollock and Dwarf Hawaiian are hit heavily by the squirrels. And I think that in both cases, the fruit tastes pretty darn good before it's completely ripe, but also both varieties have an earlier season than almost every other fruit in the grove, and so it's the squirrel's best option when they've gone through that long winter without mangoes. It's the best game in town. So anyway, we do lose some fruit to the squirrels, but as you can tell, even after picking lots of fruit, there's just a lot of fruit left.